Okay, for the, I don't know how many times that's happened, but we started recording the podcast and I realized Keith's microphone was not plugged in.
Yeah, I was just talking into the ether.
That keeps happening. I feel like it's sending a message.
Yeah.
Some kind of message where your voice isn't being recorded and, anyway, let's not worry about it.
You're slowly easing me out.
Yeah. Closing the door on you just ever so slightly. But what else we wanted to say is that we were having a conversation mere moments ago off pod that we thought was so interesting. We should begin this whole episode with it. Keith,
Yes.
take it away.
Oh, well, I was just so me and Mike we're currently having a nice refreshing can of Diet Coke, and I was just saying to Mike recently I was in my real job and I took home a can of Pepsi and a can of Coke from work to do that Pepsi Coke challenge. See if you can tell the difference.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You always see these things like in blind taste tests,
Yeah.
Pepsi gets voted better than Coke.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
As well, all these people's taste buds. It's very clear.
Yeah, Coke tastes 10 times better than Pepsi ever does. That study is clearly sponsored by Pepsi.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, because please buy our drink.
Well, sucks to them because I didn't buy it. I stole it.
Another win for Keith.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, you, and welcome to this whole episode of the That Chapter podcast. Sitting across from me, cruising Keith, at it again.
Yeah, back at it.
How are you?
Again. Good, man. It's warm today. It's hot.
It is. I am such a non-fan of summer. I'm a hater. I'm a summer hater. That's what I've decided.
Yeah, I like
full hater.
I like sweater weather.
Yeah. Not fan of this. It's July now. It's hot. It's sticky.
Yeah.
I don't like wearing shorts all the time. I'm constantly sweating.
My knees are on show. I don't like it.
I know. Nobody wants to see your knees. You
Right?
almost got like grey knees. It's weird.
That's just my Irish skin.
It's the color of mold.
Is that potato?
Oh, well, actually, speaking of horrifying things, Mike's movie review. It's triumphant return.
Okay. Yeah.
Since last week.
Oh, yeah.
I watched a couple more horror movies. I've been doing my homework studiously. The movie I want to talk to you guys today that Malibu Mike just watched was Bring Her Back.
Oh, yeah. You were talking about this.
Yeah, new movie done by the same fellers who did Talk to Me.
Yeah.
We spoke about Talk to Me, I think, in a previous podcast episode.
We did. Yep.
We did, yeah. So it's good. I liked Talk to Me. The problem was it just took... I remember we watched it together, and the movie's like an hour and a half long, and it was like an hour into the movie. We're like, okay, when's it?
Get going.
When's the movie actually start? It took forever to get going.
Yeah,
Once it got going, it was great.
Yeah, but it just wasn't enough of it getting going.
Yeah, there was way too much freaking faffing about.
Oh, yeah.
For the first like 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Bring Her Back. Anyway, it's done by those same two guys. It's once again set in Australia, right? And then in the movie, it's massive. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. So the movie, it's very disturbing.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So the movie's about the basic premise is it's a brother and a half brother and a half sister. They share a father.
I see where this is going.
No, Keith, you're watching too much porn.
Okay.
No, it's their father dies, and then they're sent to kind of a foster mother. The older son, he's like 17, he's almost 18, so he's almost like ready to go out by his own. But his younger sister is like maybe 12 or 13, 14, and she's also like almost fully blind. So they go and anyway, they move in with this foster mother, and she's like a complete psycho. And there's this other kid she's also fostering in the house who's completely mute.
Okay.
But maybe there's something going on there, and maybe she's trying to do a demonic ritual, folks.
Oh,
no,
cool.
Literally, it's a whole demonic ritual.
Oh, cool.
About.
Nice.
This is a semi-spoiler, but it's not really a spoiler. Like the trailers will give us away is that her daughter died like before, and so she's trying to bring her back to life by getting into cahoots with a demon.
Cool.
Yeah, there's lots of shots of this. Like, it's a really, really disturbing movie. It's really good. I have to say, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But do you know what your criteria, Keith, is? If a movie's good, you'll watch it again.
Yeah. The rewatchability.
Yeah, no, the rewatchability of this movie is 0.
Okay, right.
It's very good, but like it's so disturbing, I kind of don't want to watch it again. If that makes sense,
okay,
like it
right,
really got to me.
Right.
a
Okay.
lot.
Cool. Yeah.
In the best possible way. I thought it was
yeah.
a great movie, great performances. Yeah, I just thought it was a really, really good movie all around, but definitely one of the more disturbing horror movies I've watched in a long time.
Cool. Yeah. Check it
Some
out.
like definitely a lot of points in the movie where I was like, at the close, I was like, it got very like gruesome.
Yeah.
It involves a knife and a cantaloupe at one point, if anybody's seen it, and it's very disturbing. Go check it out. Bring Her Back.
Yeah. When will people learn you can't bring loved ones back from the dead? Pet Cemetery.
I know. Clearly, haven't read the Stephen King book.
Right.
Or watched some 2 movie versions.
The man warned us.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
He tried to tell us, when will we listen? But yeah. All right.
Yeah. It sounds good. Actually, do you want to hear a little bit of a real horror story?
Okay, sure, why not?
Okay, so I came across this story and I thought it was pretty funny. So this is about a woman. Her name is Zara Fleming. She's a 31-year-old psychic medium from England.
Okay.
So she claims that spirits don't let her enjoy her nights out. So she says that the voices from beyond the veil pressure her into finishing and downing her drinks so she can move on to other bars where she must deliver an unexpected message to strangers. So she says this happens all the time.
Okay, sorry to cut across you, but this just sounds like you.
Yeah.
We were just talking about how we were out having a couple of beers at the weekend, and Keith does not let anybody leave.
It's true, yeah, but my relationship with the local pub spirit, Jameson, is a bit different. So she says this happens all the time. She'd be out with friends, drink in hand, and then suddenly she gets this overwhelming urge just to down her pint and move on.
Okay.
For Zara, though, she downs her drink, and because there's like a ghostly presence whispering in her ear, telling her that there's someone at the next bar who needs to hear from the other side. So she says that she doesn't tell her friends what's happening. They just think that she's being a bit unpredictable. Meanwhile, she's quietly following her own ghostly pub crawl.
Okay.
So when she gets to the next bar, there's often someone there, some random stranger who ends up getting a message from a dead relative, which is then delivered by Zara. Apparently, the reactions, they vary from some people being a bit spooked, some people being emotional, but surprisingly, the number of people are actually quite grateful. I can't imagine being out on the night out and some stranger walks up and be like, "Oi, your dead nan's got a message for you."
I think she's just bullshitting and just trying to get free drinks.
Right, I'm 100% using this excuse going forward.
Yeah,
it's not me, it's the ghosts.
Exactly. Yeah, they also just told me they want you to buy me the next couple of pints. They also want a shot of whiskey, and I'll be the vessel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe Zara, but
who knows?
Whom knows?
Stranger things have happened.
Where did you find this story?
Oh, just online. It was on themirror.co.uk.
Wow. Okay.
So,
well, a trustworthy website if there ever was one. Yeah. All right. The good old mirror. Okay. All right. Well, folks, you heard it here first.
Yep.
Or possibly second or third.
Yeah, who knows?
We're gonna say first. Yeah. Yep. Very good. Okay.
Speaking of Stranger Things, let's get into today's episode, I guess.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Keith. Today, folks, we are talking about the Lava Lake's Trapper Murders. The Lava Lake Murders, this is a very creepy, outdoorsy, spooky story. And it all began with the Grim Hike.
Ooh.
Alright, folks, to set the scene, we're going back to the early, 1920s into Oregon. Think of, the Pacific Northwest and mountains and the Pacific, the trees,
The final frontier.
The things, yeah. Oregon trappers. Think of all that kind of stuff. And think of two in particular. Owen Morris and Hervey Innes trudged along the wilderness in their snowshoes. It was April 1924, and the expedition progress was slow and steady. It had snowed for 2 weeks prior to their hike, and at first sight of clear skies, the team was afoot on their journey. Owen Morris, in particular, was eager to reach their destination, but a weight in his stomach must have been building as their destination grew nearer. His little brother, Dewey, had been part of a 3-person trapper group lodging in a log cabin in the Deschutes National Forest, situated about 25 miles southwest from Bend, Oregon. His brother had been there with his group from autumn 1923 through to early spring 1924, or they were supposed to have been there. See, the last sighting of Dewey and the 2 trappers he was trapping with, was a worrying long time ago. It was in January, and it's now April. They should have been back by now. The whole group was meant to return in February, yet there hadn't been any sign of them. Now, Owen knew there weren't many reasons why this might have been, without it being something bad.
Yeah, it's not like trapping was going so well that they decided to, hang out and catch some more.
Yeah.
The season for animals like beavers and foxes and raccoons, that would have wrapped up around January, February. There was other animals like muskrats that went on a bit longer, but pretty much everything for seasonal trapping, it would have ended around mid-March.
Yeah.
Trapping as well, that wasn't even their main gig. To treat them, they were all loggers too, so they would have needed to get back to work. Trapping, it was just something they were doing in the winter months.
Yeah, exactly, when you had nothing else to do, so it's alright, let's go make a few bob out there in the wilds where they are spending most of their time. Anyway, so Owen knew he needed to find his brother Dewey and the other 2. Now, many things can go wrong in the wilderness. The trapper team wasn't particularly experienced, but they had enjoyed relative success and enjoyed the fruits of their labor hiking back into town for Christmas and spending some of the fur money on food and drink and visiting family. It seemed, when they had last been seen around Christmas time, that they were doing all right. The season had been good. They were in good spirits when he had last seen them around that time, and shortly after they headed back into the depths of the Pacific Northwest forests, and now they hadn't returned when they were supposed to have returned. Why hadn't anyone heard from them for a while? That's what Owen and Hervey were there to find out. As the cabin finally appeared in their sights, the fears the hikers held started to expand. The snow was untouched around the cabin. There was no smoke coming from the chimney. The place looked lifeless. Something wasn't right. Hervey Innes, who was a superintendent of the local fish hatchery, didn't usually need a gun in his line of work, but he had nonetheless brought one of his at the behest of Owen Morris. He drew it, stepping into the cabin with Owen, holding his own pistol at the ready as well. Now, inside the cabin, the place was a mess, but there were no apparent signs of violence. The trappers were known to keep a tight ship, keeping their belongings and tools organized and in good condition, tending their little cabin with care and respect. So the sight was unusual. Things were thrown around on the floor. Remains of food still laid out on the table had been eaten by mold, and something had burned into a pan on the stove. Boots, winter coats, and most importantly weapons were all neatly placed where they were expected to be, laid out for the meticulous trappers to take them and use them at the start of their duties on the trapping lines. But the boots remained. They hadn't been put on, yet the trappers were nowhere to be seen. Why had they left the cabin unarmed and without proper winter gear? Where were the tree trappers of Lava Lakes?
Disturbingly as well, it looked like the cabin had been empty for some time. Like, it wasn't as if they just missed the men and like they'd only popped out a little while ago. When they opened the door, a half-starved cat shot past them. Clearly, it hadn't been fed in like weeks.
Wow.
Surviving on just whatever food scraps were just like around at the cabin at the time. Whoever had been staying there, they were gone. And they'd, as I said, they'd left without their winter gear and weapons, as you said. So like, it wasn't just strange, it was dangerous.
Spooky. Now, Lava Lakes, the area where they're in, it gets the name from their formation. They are the result of eruptions from the volcanoes dotting the Cascades that border the Deschutes National Forest to the west. The Cascades are part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, the mountain ranges lining the Pacific Ocean, resulting in volcanic activity and frequent eruptions. Indeed, all the volcanic eruptions in the US, excluding Hawaii, Keith, are you listening? Have been the work of the Cascades. God damn them Cascades! With Mount St. Helens being the angriest of the peaks, erupting as recently as in the 80s. Now, lava lakes, they consist of, Keith, are you paying attention?
I am, I'm listening.
Lava lake and a little lava lake.
Ooh, okay, I'll try to remember that.
It's a tough one, I know. They are separated by solidified lava and formed through these lava flows, altering the drainage of rain and melting snow from the mountains. They're like little naturally formed reservoirs. The relative shallow depth and clear waters make for beautiful lakes though. High in the 1,440 meter, that's 4,740 feet, elevation in the mountains. It's a gorgeous location, these parts. Mountain peaks visible in the distance, solidified lava formations, lining the lake's shorelines, and thick forests as far as the eye can see.
Lava Lake itself it's really, like, you said it's shallow. It's really shallow. It's only like 20 foot deep or something like that.
Yeah.
What's interesting though, it's about like an hour drive away from Lava Lake, there is Crater Lake. And that's the deepest lake in the US. With about 2,000 feet. I think it's like 9th deepest in the world as well.
Wow. Isn't that mad?
It is mad. I was looking up a little fact. Here's a tidbit for you.
Tidbit Keith is out in force again.
Here's an interesting fact for you.
You're raising a pointer.
You could stack the Eiffel Tower, the Washington Monument, and the Statue of Liberty on top of each other at the deepest point in Crater Lake, and you still have about 100 foot to spare.
Keith, you done it again. Blown my mind. The Deschutes National Forest was founded in 1908 and spans an area of about 6,500 square meters. That's 1.6 million acres. The Newberry volcano and Big Obsidian flow within it, which is a solidified magma field, providing suitably inhospitable training grounds for Apollo astronauts in the 60s and considered a national landmark. Now, trapping in this time and area, well, it was a lucrative business in the 20s. Keith, you briefly spoke about it. Trapping season usually lasted from October to March, due to the animal's fur being the thickest in the winter. You want to get them when they're good, thick boys. Many did it as a side gig, earning a little extra cash working a season or two between jobs, or during downtime from other professions that focused on in the summertime. And it was this winter season, 1923 to 1924, that 3 trappers set out. First was Edward Ed Nichols, who was born in Ohio in June 1870. He was the oldest of his parents' 8 children. He married a Canadian woman in 1895 with whom he had 2 daughters, but the marriage ended in 1913 and Nichols relocated to Oregon. It appears his paths crossed with a fellow named Roy Wilson around this time. The Wilsons and the Nichols were family friends that went way back, so naturally the 2 men formed a strong friendship. By 1920, both Nichols and Roy Wilson resided in Bend, Oregon. Nichols with his brother Guilford, and Roy with his mother Sarah, who he provided for. Now, Ed Nichols had been trapping the year before, the season of 1922 to 1923, but with modest success. He also ran into issues with his trapping mate, a guy named Lee Collins, who had ran off with his money and thrown threats at Ed Nichols when he had the audacity to report him running away with his money. What a fucking asshole.
Bastard.
Yeah. Not only does he steal all your shit, he then threatens you for ratting him out. Fucking rat. I thought you were cool. So as unexpected as the whole ordeal had been, when Ed Nichols went to report Lee Collins stealing his shit, he was blindsided once again. Lee Collins didn't exist. The man Nichols had spent a whole winter with in close quarters trapping was in fact Charles Kimsey, a wanted fugitive who had ran away from a penitentiary in Idaho.
Yeah, Collins or Kimsey, depending on who you ask, I guess. He was a real rough piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
He was the kind of man who made folks uneasy without even trying. He had this strange, twitchy way of talking with like quick bursts of words that like spat out through his like clenched teeth, and he had lips pulled back in like a wide but like unsettling grin. People said it sounded like a hiss and like a mumble all at once. Now, he wasn't like a big man, maybe like 5'7", 160 pounds, but like years of like hard living had really left their mark on this man. He'd been a ranch hand, a teamster, a logger, a bootlegger, sheep herder, fur trapper, you name it, anything out in the wild, like he'd done it. But like, yeah, I can't imagine spending a lot of time with this man, let alone a whole winter in a cabin with him.
Yeah, locked up in a cabin with this crazy asshole.
Maybe he was a good singer, who knows?
Yeah, I hope so.
Maybe there's some redeeming qualities, but I doubt it.
So shaken but unabated by the turn of events, Ed Nichols decided he wanted to do another season of trapping. He was more experienced in it now and was eager to try again, but old Lee Collins, or Charles Kimsey, as his real name was, he had been threatening the shit out of him, and he never forgot those threats that Kimsey had made. So, to feel safe while in the wilderness, he decided to ask 2 of his burliest friends to keep him company and keep them all safe. Roy Wilson was the second trapper, Ed Nichols' close friend. Now, Roy Wilson, he'd been born in Colorado in 1888 to Lavinia Sarah Jones, who went by Sarah, and Charles Wilson. He had 2 sisters, Leoella and Rose. Rose was married to Hervey Innes, who, if you'll remember, had accompanied Owen Morris in the search party for these exact trappers. Now, Roy Wilson was an ex-Marine. His registration card recorded his height at 5'9.5", which is way taller than Keith, and his weight at 165 pounds.
I'm short king, man. I'm short king.
Despite his modest stature, he was described as rugged and strong, as you would have to be become a Marine. Roy was fully trained, but never deployed in Europe during World War I. He was stationed at Fort Crockett near Galveston, Texas throughout the war. And finally, we have the third trapper, Dewey Morris, who was born in 1900 in Little Sioux, Iowa, before the family moved to Bend, Oregon. Dewey was the youngest of 4 boys born to John and Hattie Morris. Dewey, Ben, and Owen worked as loggers, while eldest son Donald managed a ranch. And it was Owen who embarked on the hike to search for him, Roy Wilson, and Ed Nichols. Now, Dewey was young and strong with an imposing physique. He could easily withstand the hardship of the wilderness. But there might have been a personal reason as to why young Dewey Morris agreed to go trapping for this season. See, Dewey had been on a date in November 1922 with a local Gertrude Penalt, who went by her middle name Mary, as I can imagine you would, rather than call it Gertrude. Now, Mary was 5 years older, widowed, and from sisters, which today it's now part of Bend. Without making it too graphic and getting into it too much, the couple did not agree on how their date should end, after Dewey parked his vehicle with his passenger in what was apparently a common lover's lane location. Yeah. Dewey did not testify and was found not guilty of rape in record time. But the case drew a lot of attention and ridicule among locals, something the family of Mary, and Mary herself, of course, greatly suffered from.
I'd say so, yeah. Especially like those he said, she said cases. Like, they're notoriously difficult to solve these days, let alone back in 1922 when the favor was always in the men.
Yeah, for sure. So to recap, you have Ed Nichols, 54 years of age, who was experienced in trapping and the area, but a year before had had a unpleasant trapping experience with a guy who had threatened to murder him, and he still was fearful that this guy might come back. So he asked his two friends, Roy Wilson, 36 years of age, who was an ex-Marine, and Dewey Morris, 24, who was young, strong, and a logger, but was also looking to get away for a bit after being accused, found not guilty, of, rape and sexual assault.
Yep.
So they were a bit of an unlikely bunch. An unlikely bunch, though, to have succumbed to the wilderness. Two of the guys were loggers, strong, tough guys. All three of them would have been fairly experienced. Yet, when Hervey Innes and Owen Morris finally reached their cabin, they were gone.
Without a trace. Well, there was some trace.
There was a bit of a trace.
We'll get into it.
Yeah. So life in the wilderness was tough, even if you were tough. You don't get sick days. If you skipped a day at chores, you risked death or injury, or missed out on earnings to support yourself and your family. The cabin the men inhabited for the season, it was only a few years old, and still sturdy and functional. It sat at the edge of a thick forest, and gave to a little lava lake, which was abundant with fish to catch. The log cabin belonged to Edward Logan and was most likely built around 1918, so it was a fairly recently built cabin. Now, Edward Ed Fields Logan was a 53-year-old logging contractor from Minnesota, living on Franklin Street in Bend, Oregon, with his wife Catherine at the time of the trapper's disappearance. And as I said, he owned the cabin. The exact spot the cabin is today, though, it's not really known, but it's likely where the current Little Lava Lake campground sits. So it wasn't all hardships and misery, though, in the wilderness. There's a photo of Nichols, Roy, and Dewey in the front of their log cabin, actually, which you can view today, acting silly and having some fun in the snow, likely taken by Hervey Innes.
Well, I guess it's silly by 1920 standards.
Yeah, well, they were being very gay in the 1920s,
language,
meaning of the phrase. Yeah,
because I think smiling in photography only came in 1920s,
oh, yeah,
1930s.
You're supposed to be absolutely stone-faced. Yeah, no smiling.
Yeah, not like these days with the peak humor of planking for a photograph.
Oh man, do people still do that?
I'd like to think so.
Planking, T-bowing, all the good ones. Yeah.
What's T-bowing?
Oh, that was T-bowing is pretty old now, but it's a football thing.
Oh, okay.
It would take too long to explain.
Okay,
but,
yeah.
These are all good old things. What do the kids do nowadays?
I don't know. TikTok. Something to do with TikTok.
Yeah, they're TikToking. I have no
Whatever
idea.
The hell that is.
So even in close quarters, though, the isolation could still sometimes get to you, and frustrations surely arose. You needed to trust in the camaraderie of your trapping mates, and you knew they trusted you unconditionally. They had to. Ed Nichols knew how important this was, especially after his bad experience the previous season. And by all accounts, it looked like this season had been a lot more successful. They weren't only trapping, but also earning extra cash from looking after Ed Logan's 4 immensely valuable silver foxes.
Ooh, silver fox. It's just like George Clooney.
Yeah.
Locked up in a cage out the back.
Yeah. You know who I am? When Nichols and Roy had returned home for Christmas, Dewey had stayed behind to man the cabin. They had brought with them about $3,000 worth of furs. That would be over $50,000 in today's money. So the season had been going extremely well. That's so much money.
Yeah, and the buying power back then as well was so much more.
But then they vanished. So when her son Roy didn't return when he said he would, Sarah Wilson raised the alarm and turned to Owen Morris, who set out for Lava Lakes with his friend Hervey Innes. This was on April 13th. A missing persons case was opened in Bend, but back at the cabin, the already worrying picture began to get grim when Owen and Hervey Innes started to inspect the surroundings. The silver foxes were missing, and the fur stocks were emptied. Then they found the blood. About 30 feet away from the cabin was a large pool of blood and what appeared to be bone fragments. Spent shell casings were also located, 5 from a shotgun, 3 from a pistol. Footprints were harder to spot due to the snow buildup. Blood-stained sled tracks led from the cabin to the shore of Little Lava Lake. The sled, a horrifying sight.
I think they also found like a really bloody hammer as well.
Yeah, it was a very grim scene. County Sheriff Bert Roberts assigned Deputy Clarence Adams to the case. Adams had experience in the area and indeed set out to inspect the surroundings of the cabin immediately, putting his knowledge of the trap lines to good use. The search of the 30-mile line was initiated, and few cabins dotting the wilderness along this trapping line were all searched, but nothing came of it except for a few dead minks and skunks. Clearly, the traps hadn't been maintained for some time. Some occupants of the cabins in the area did report some suspicious activity, evidence of persons passing by in the wintertime, where they lost trappers or persons unknown with unsavory knowledge of the fate of the 3 missing men. Likely dead men with the blood and the gunshot shit they found.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Meanwhile, Sheriff Roberts conducted a round of calls to ranger stations around the Deschutes National Forest area and reached Alan Wilcoxon, who was the manager of Elk Lake Camp. Elk Lake Camp was owned by the Forest Service, but Wilcoxon was in charge of operating the place, a position he had inherited from a previous manager in 1923, while working at the camp building cabins and clearing trails for campers. Now, Wilcoxon was famous for his moonshine, which he brewed at Elk Lake Camp and served to friends and guests at Saturday night parties. Yes, this was during the Prohibition, but Prohibition, schmohibition, it never really took hold. So Wilcoxon, who was, in charge of this other camp, he informed the investigators that guess what? He'd actually met with the man at Lava Lake's cabin. He'd met with them, the 3 lads, January 15th. They'd been good crack.
Okay.
They'd been sharing the moonshine, been swigging it, having a little gulp. And he said they were great. They were in good spirits, both figuratively and literally, my friend.
Having a grand old time.
They were having the crack Augustiel.
Do you want to do something interesting?
No.
So, okay.
Moving on. Okay, I'll let this one.
Oregon, it was actually, like, with the Prohibition, it was kind of just business as usual with the moonshiners. The Prohibition in the US, that launched around 1920. However, in Oregon, they'd already implemented something sort of like pre-Prohibition, like a few years ago, back in like 1916. So when the Prohibition became the law of the land, Oregon's underground liquor industry, that was already well up and running.
Oh, wow. So they
knew what they were doing.
So yeah, it's just business as usual.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah. So the 3 men at the cabin, when Wilcoxon showed up, they enjoyed hanging out with them. They enjoyed the change in the monotony of the trapping his moonshine provided. And, well, basically, they were all having a good time.
Yeah.
Wilcoxon would say he had seen them January 15th and then left. And, well, they were still alive, he says, January 15th. But it also meant that Alan Wilcoxon was one of the last people, maybe the very last person, to see the men alive.
Yeah.
Which is usually not a good thing.
No.
Sheriff Roberts set out to search the lake, Lava Lake, using a motorboat. One theory was that the trappers had fallen into the ice, crossing the frozen lake. The blood on the sled was also sent in for testing, which at the time was pretty rudimentary. A doctor would, this is the 20s. Yeah.
That's definitely blood.
Yeah, that's it. Literally, that's about it. You could tell if it was human or animal blood, but that was like end of it.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to do that. Like, yeah, literally probably taste it. Tastes like chicken. Yeah, that's about it.
Tastes like a rusty penny. That's human, yeah.
Among the mess in the Lava Lake cabin, a large beaver hat was found that seemingly belonged to none of the men. Didn't belong to Ed Nichols, Roy Wilson, or Dewey Morse. The skinned bodies of the silver foxes was also located a little ways away, shortly before the sheriff was made aware of a curious occurrence that occurred on January 22nd.
Interestingly, so there were 2 of the foxes had been skinned with precision, so like really like clean and professional. But the other 3 were like a complete mess. They were like roughed and rushed, like some just didn't know what they were doing. I think
making shite of the fur.
Yeah, I think like from what I was reading, I think you're meant to leave like the feet on.
Not from what you read, not what you're practicing at home.
Well,
wink, wink.
Don't say no.
Shit, am I not supposed to say that on the podcast?
All the cats are going missing in the neighborhood. No, but like, I think you're meant to leave the feet on when you're like getting the pelts.
Yeah,
apparently, and I think getting the feet off, it's not worth as much money. So like clearly, one person knew what they were doing that was involved, and the other person hadn't a clue how to handle a knife. Definitely 2 people.
Definitely made it seem like there's 2 people involved, which is exactly what Sheriff Roberts learned had happened on January 22nd. He was informed of something strange. Carl Schumacher of the Schumacher Fur Company in Portland reported that 2 persons with furs and Nichols' trapping license had sold some furs to him. The partner was described as having been glib and charismatic, neat, clean-shaven, and well-dressed. Nothing was outwardly suspicious rousing about the pair, except for the fact he was posing as Ed Nichols. Carl Schumacher was shown a picture of Ed Nichols and said, "That's definitely not the man who had his fishing license and was selling me furs."
Yeah.
It started to look like whatever happened now in January. It was only because, well, also the wall calendar at the cabin was still on January.
Yep.
So they hadn't survived to February. By this point, the investigators at the cabin were coming to a conclusion on what had happened to the men. Ed Logan, the cabin owner, he also followed sled tracks onto the lake, which, despite the thaw, had started to thin the ice. About 100 meters away from the shore, Ed Logan found a hole that had been hacked into the ice, seemingly with a hatchet. Stains of blood surrounded this hole in the ice.
They'd also found like a brown human hair on the edge of the ice hole as well. So yeah, it was pretty clear what was being put down
grim. There. Yeah, imagine dragging somebody out into the middle of this frozen lake, cutting a hole in it.
Yeah, and I can't imagine they put a lot of effort into like making a big hole.
Yeah,
or obviously like hole just big enough to shove someone down.
I thought it'd be like, I mean, obviously, I presume the tree trappers, which is what you can assume they're going to find down there, would have been dead at this point. But
do you know what's weird? And I was thinking about
what's that, Keith?
I was thinking about before with this case. It seems like apparently like they killed the men up the cabin. They put 3 bodies, which are heavy, it's dead weight, onto a sled, dragged them down to the lake. They put all the effort into cutting a hole in the lake and then shoved the bodies into the lake. It just seems like a lot of effort to hide bodies.
When you're not cleaning up the scene and leaving blood all over the place and shit like that.
You're not cleaning the scene. It's not as if someone's going to come along anytime soon. You kind of have a lot of time up there anyway. And then like the lake, if you're from the area, the lake's very shallow. You know it's going to thaw out and then the bodies are going to show up again.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense why to hide the bodies.
It's just seemed like a lot of effort to hide them that way. I feel if they had just left them out, maybe wild animals would have probably did more than what they did.
Yeah, you probably would have wolves or a bear maybe or something come along and just gobble it up.
Yeah.
All right, chow down on this, pal. So, the investigators at the cabin had only one task ahead of them, to wait for the ice to melt and reveal what was hiding underneath. On April 23rd, that wait would come to a miserable end. 3 bodies were seen floating on the lake. One by one, they were pulled from the water and identified as the missing trappers. A coroner was brought to the scene to inspect the apparent injuries on the bodies, and he saw immediately the men had grievous gunshot wounds. Roy Morris was so badly beaten he was hardly recognizable. Dewey Morris had 1 shotgun wound to the arm, while his face was almost caved in with blunt force trauma, apparent to have been inflicted with a hammer, which was much more overkill than the other 2 trappers. His cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head.
Yeah, the hammer injuries, they were both pre-mortem and post-mortem. And like I said, it was complete overkill. Like it kind of felt like from the injuries that were done, it kind of feels like Dewey, he might have been the target.
Yeah, which is interesting. Yeah. We'll get into some theories, but yeah. Ed Nichols' jaw, it had been decimated by a shotgun blast. He had also suffered a .38 caliber revolver wound to the throat. He was still wearing his spectacles when pulled from the lake, a pair of reading glasses he used indoors.
Some good glasses.
I know. Man, opticians and Specsavers, get on this. Yeah, what an ad.
I lose mine when I fall asleep in the bed. Can't find them, they're gone.
The thing was, he always used a different pair of glasses when he was outside. So the attack had clearly started inside.
Yeah.
A pocket watch on his person had stopped at 9:10 o'clock. AM or the PM? We don't know.
I wonder what was on the stove.
Could be breakfast, could be dinner.
Yeah.
The shotgun wound to the lower right side of his face had been his cause of death. Roy Wilson, he had died of a gunshot wound to the back of the head, right behind his ear. He had also been shot in the right shoulder with a shotgun at close range, removing parts of his shoulder. When the test results for the sled came back as positive of human blood, the progression of the events, became clearer as Keith we just went through. Once the men had been brutally murdered, the bodies were taken to the lake using the sled, then slid under the ice through a hole just large enough to fit a body through. Then, they remained there until the thaw brought them back up. Ed Nichols had taken Charles Kimsey's anger and threats seriously and had entrusted his safety to a strong logger and an ex-Marine. He had been scared something like this would happen.
Yeah.
And in the end, it didn't matter. They still were all brutally murdered. But who had done this? Had it been Lee Collins, aka Charles Kimsey, who had threatened Ed Nichols a season prior, or whom else.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows?
Let's get into it. So let's talk about suspect numero 1.
Okay.
That was Charles Kimsey. Charles Kimsey was a petty criminal who trudged the line between crime and straight and narrow, basically. He was born in Idaho in 1885. His parents divorced when he was just 7 years old, which disrupted his upbringing greatly, and possibly contributed to his inability to abide by the law in his later years. He had a conviction for grand larceny in Idaho, which he had served only 4 months before escaping with a stolen horse and disappearing into anonymity. He assumed an alias, Lee Collins, and worked as a sheep farmer in Idaho and Oregon, doing his best to avoid crime and the authorities, doing poorly at the former and well at the latter. He ended up in Bend, Oregon in 1922, working under the alias Lee Collins, and accompanied Ed Nichols to the Logan Lava Lake cabin for the 1922-23 trapping season. He and Ed Nichols also cared for the valuable silver foxes owned by Logan. During their time together at the cabin, Charles Kimsey imparted with plenty of sensitive information about his criminal past to Ed Nichols, something he would come to regret when Nichols then shared what he had told him to the authorities when he was saying that, well, he had stolen all his money. And therein lies the strong motive that put Charles Kimsey on the top of the suspect list almost immediately. In 1923, his unlawful exploits started to draw attention. After the season had come to an end, the inexperienced trappers, Nichols and Kimsey, hadn't earned as much as they hoped they would. Kimsey believed he was being swindled out of his fair share and retaliated by going back to the Logan cabin and stealing Nichols' $500 he had stashed up there. That equates to nearly like $10,000, by the way, in like $20-25 dues, so it's a lot of money. Yeah. He also broke into Logan's home in Bend and stole a beaver coat and a ring belonging to Logan's wife. These crimes were the ones Ed Nichols and Ed Logan quite rightfully reported him for doing, hence putting the law on his ass. Charles Kimsey then went on a run. He attacked and almost killed a taxi driver named Harrison, stole his vehicle, but that would be the crime that would finally end him in jail.
He said he felt cheated out of the money. Like, the reality was, apparently, the fur market at the time, it was so low. So Logan, he decided to wait and sell the fur until the prices went up. But Kimsey, he wanted his money immediately, and he interpreted this as an attempt by Nichols and Logan to, cheat him out of his thing.
Oh, right. Even though they were like,
you'll get more money.
They're trying to help him out. We just won't sell him. Yeah. Well, he's an idiot, so.
Yeah.
Kimsey was very good at keeping his distance from the authorities, but he was finally apprehended in Montana and tried in 1933 in connection to the attempted murder of the taxi driver Harrison. Kimsey was 48 at the time. This was 9 years after the Lava Lake murders. He'd been on the run for a long time. In an interview about the triple homicide, Charles Kimsey stated he had been in Colorado during January of 1924, building the Moffat Tunnel. He had indeed been in Colorado under an alias, Tom Collins, but his payroll had ended in the early days of January. There was also eyewitness sightings of him outside of Colorado from that time, but it wasn't enough to prove that he was indeed at Lava Lakes committing the murders. Without a confession or evidence to place him at the scene, the authorities' hands were tied. But his trial for the attempted murder of the taxi driver when he was making his getaway, that trial went forward. See, Harrison, who was the taxi driver he almost killed, he would testify at trial. He described the harrowing events. Charles Kimsey, at the time using an alias, Lee Collins, had reserved Harrison's jitney, taxi, for a 60-mile drive to buy pack horses. A few miles out of the supposed destination then, Charles Kimsey pulled a revolver and hit Harrison over the head with it, rendering him unconscious. Upon regaining his consciousness, Harrison was then forced to drink poison, undressed, tied up, and then dropped into a cistern.
This is what an asshole. He had 10 grand in his pocket.
Yeah, I know, and he's still like,
fuck
fair. You, yeah. Charles Kimsey then took off with his belongings in the jitney, and Harrison, he did manage to come to and eventually crawl out and get help. So, I mean, that kind of does show you the kind of sort of man Charles Kimsey is, so...
Not a nice man.
Yeah, and possibly one who would be capable of murdering 3 people, really.
Sounds like it,
Yeah. Charles Kimsey, now, he received a life sentence for the attempted murder and served it at the Oregon State Penitentiary. He was paroled, however, at the age of 72 and moved to Idaho, where he stayed until his death. In a parole hearing in 1940, Charles Kimsey continued to profess his innocence in both the attempted murder of Harrison and the triple murder at Lava Lakes. When asked about the triple murder by the parole board, he responded he was in Chicago, and that's why the charges were dropped. There's no record of his alleged Chicago alibi, though, especially because he already said he was in Colorado at the time. And it's interesting, though, that even all these years later, he was still being asked about the triple murder at Lava Lake. So they always kind of were like...
They always pegged him for it.
I did it, though, didn't you?
Yeah. It's mad way they let him go, though. Even though he still... just for the Harrison attempted murder, he was still, pleading his innocence. And he said, oh, okay. Well, I'll let you out, though.
Yeah, it's not one of the things for parole that you have to, admit guilt.
Admit your guilt, yeah. And, confess and feel bad about it.
Yeah. It was very weird. Yeah. By the way, the men selling the silver fox furs to Carl Schumacher on January 22nd, 1924, who seemed like they were most certainly the murderers, as they had Ed Nichols' fur trapper ID, they were believed to be Kimsey and some unidentified accomplice. However, Schumacher was unable to give a positive identification of Kimsey, if only for the fact that the unknown partner was the one doing the talking and posing as Nichols, while the person alleged to have been Kimsey was standing in the corner, avoiding eye contact, staying out of sight.
In the shadows.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that two men reportedly passed through the area during the early part of winter and broke into the home of a man named Casey Jones, who lived approximately 20 miles away from the crime scene. So there was no description of the perpetrators exists because they went unseen, but their presence was only made known to Jones by the missing items in his cabin and two sets of unfamiliar tracks that were outside. So there was definitely two strangers in the town at the time.
For sure. It's just, if Kimsey did do it, that's a lot of effort to go through for revenge. And it's sort of it's not really revenge because you did get away with all the money.
I know, you already got revenge.
Yeah, why are you trying to get revenge?
Extra revenge.
Yeah. Revenge part 2. Yeah. But I guess maybe he really did just want to kill Ed Nichols for ratting him out. And also he knew that they had a lot of money, that there would be a lot of money there. I mean, there was the valuable silver foxes. Maybe he was well, they're probably worth, I don't know how much they're worth, but a couple of grand each. Yeah. So he was oh, let's go back and nab those silver foxes at the very least.
Extra revenge and money.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, Charles Kimsey, definitely good for this crime. No ifs or buffs about it. He's, definitely capable of doing it. He knew the location well, and he was able to plan out his crime in advance. He knew the men would be there in isolation and would not be expected home for several more weeks, giving him time and distance to get away. He may have even believed he would be able to steal a large amount of pelts, it being towards the end of the trapper season. Not knowing, though, that Nichols had actually gone and sold a lot of what they had gathered already for 50 grand.
Yeah.
So that's so much money. But, as I said, he also knew about the valuable silver foxes. And Charles Kimsey did tell many people he would kill Ed Nichols, including a girlfriend in Boise. He said, quote, this is the old, if anybody kills me, it's them, part of the story. Literally, Charles Kimsey is alleged to have said, quote, I'm going back to Bend to clean out that bunch.
That's pretty dumb.
All right, well, there you go. Thanks for listening to the podcast, folks. No, there is some other suspects we'll get into.
There is, and one of those suspects is Alan Wilcoxon,
who was the manager of a campground in the same national forests near Lava Lakes.
Yes, correct, and he was the last known person to see the victims alive.
With the moonshine.
Usually, the last known person to see the victims alive is excluded from the suspect pool as soon as possible. It's usually the first person that police talk to. But Alan Wilcoxon, however, he was never even considered a suspect. So was it because he was, so readily provided information about his interaction with the murdered man? He was forthcoming to the police, being yeah, I saw them last, I went up, I shared spirits that I made, which is already illegal. Yeah. So he's very forthcoming with it. Or was it because Wilcoxon also had a good friend, Sheriff Claude Macaulay, who took over the case later on and, may have protected him from a bit of scrutiny? It is still peculiar how in the parole hearing, Kimsey provided Wilcoxon as a character witness. So the pair possibly forming a friendship at a mill in Bend at some point. Kimsey, he may have even taught Wilcoxon how to brew moonshine, something Wilcoxon, as we mentioned, he became well known for in the area. The fact of the matter still is, though, the circles in Bend, they were tiny and pretty much everyone knew everyone. And a connection of this kind is in no way indicative of Wilcoxon's character. Indeed, like, there simply is no other reason to suspect Wilcoxon other than his loose link to Kimsey and his proximity to the time of the crime. Like, there's no circumstantial factors pointing to him. And it's just not simply enough, given he placed himself on the scene of the crime with no hesitation, when he easily could have, not disclosed any information or told him anything or just not shown up.
Possibly, but I mean, the fact that he was going to be a character witness for the main suspect is like... 555, come on now. It is a bit weird.
It is a little sus.
Maybe he assumed, I don't know much about the moonshine stuff, but maybe he had been drinking moonshine with the boys and had left some of his moonshine glasses or bottles there and was like, oh shit, they're going to find them. I better admit that I've been to visit them. Maybe I should admit that I was at a cabin before they find evidence of me being at the cabin drinking moonshine with them or something.
That's true, yeah. Maybe he was getting ahead of it.
Possibly.
He was controlling the narrative. Fuck, am I gone back on it? It was
the whole time. Another suspect was Ray Van Buren Jackson. This is based from a book, Melanie Tupper's 2013 book called The Trapper Murders. In the book, the author poses a theory that a local criminal named Ray Van Buren Jackson was not only Kimsey's partner in the killings, but the true mastermind behind the crime. The author backs her theory with extensive research on Jackson's psychology and criminal life. However, this is just speculation and can't be verified by any means available to the forensic science today with evidence we have. So in Melanie Tupper's theory, Jackson is the driving force behind the attack, and Charles Kimsey, while maybe acting as a catalyst, was a mere enabler to a psychopath. Jackson, upon hearing Kimsey talking shit about getting his revenge, took the opportunity to act upon his violent urges. They hatched a plan to ambush the men at the cabin and steal their fox skins. Although Jackson was more in it for the rush of the killing. Kimsey, maybe believing they were just going to rough the men up and had no idea what carnage they had indeed set out to commit. So Jackson and Kimsey had multiple opportunities to come together, starting with a familial one-true marriage. Kimsey's father's cousin's daughter married Jackson's brother.
Ooh, loose.
Yeah. The author, Melanie Tupper, is really stretching this theory, but it's worth, I guess, putting out there. Ray Van Buren Jackson, he was born in Missouri in 1869, so would have been 55 around the time of the murders, still very much in the prime of his criminal activities. And he was also known to spend time away from his ranch, though, from October to April, and he matched the description of Kimsey's partner by the witnesses. Unfortunately, the thing about Ray Van Buren Jackson is not really much, if anything, is known about him. He sort of just disappears into history.
He does, yeah. I will say, though, I do like this theory. Like, he definitely kind of fits the psychopath bill.
Mm-hmm.
Before the Lava Lake murders, he'd already done a 3-year stretch in the Oregon State Pen for forgery.
Okay.
Which, not exactly murder, but he was still in prison.
He's still criminal scum.
Yeah. Forging bills.
Yeah,
fuck him.
The worst.
But somehow, after all that, being locked up, he ended up in charge of grade school kids. That's right. He was hired as a school teacher in Silver Lake, Oregon.
Okay.
Here's a shocker. He was also a big fan of corporal punishment.
Okay.
His preferred tool was a horsewhip. He'd even told a neighbor that he brought his Colt revolver and a baseball bat to class. I guess in case...
As you do.
Things got out of hand, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. He's like, wow, baseball bat. He's ready. He's not mucking about, with like a wooden spoon or a slipper. He's got a baseball bat. He's going...
He'll fucking get you.
Yeah.
One time he actually got into a fist fight with a student. Then the next morning he strolls into class. He lays out his .45 Colt revolver on the desk. And he says... Anyone want to finish yesterday's scrap?
Hell yeah.
That's the way to shut it down.
Okay, he rocks.
He's a real pillar of the community here, all right?
He's my favorite character in this
He's
story.
good. Now, thankfully...
it's a bunch of kids.
Just placing it down. I was like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. How old were the kids?
It says grade school, so whatever that is.
Wait, grade school? That's like that's children. That's not even teenagers. I think.
Yeah,
that was like he gets into a fist fight with an 8-year-old and it brings in a revolver the next day.
Yeah, won that one. But now, thankfully, his time as a school teacher in Silver Lake, Oregon, it was short-lived, but not because he was fired. He got promoted to superintendent of Lake County Schools, and he moved to Lakeview after that. Now, 2 years later, surprise, surprise, he was indicted for embezzlement, and he resigned in 1911. So apparently, whipping kids and threatening with a gun is fine, but stealing money is a big no-no. That's where they draw the line, the school system.
Fair.
Now, after this, he moved on to a number of other adventures, including cattle ranching, retail business, homesteading. He never went back to teaching, thankfully. And believe it or not, that's kind of just the start of his character. Now, leaving aside the Lava Lake murders, Jackson, he was linked to at least 6 other suspicious deaths.
What?
Yeah, now 3 were ruled suicides and 3 are still officially unsolved.
Wow.
So yeah, I guess if you're looking for like suspects with a history of violence, cruelty, and shady disappearances, Jackson could be your guy.
He kind of does fit the bill, right?
He does, doesn't he? Yeah, wow. Like I was reading articles where like, possible serial killer. Now again, like he was never officially linked to any of these unsolved cases or weird suicides. But, I mean, like, there's no smoke without fire.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a pretty interesting character, right?
Yeah, right.
A lot of interesting characters in this story. So there really is no way of knowing, though, if, something completely unknown or known happened to the men. I mean, maybe it was related to Dewey Morris and the accusations against him from, only a couple of months prior about him, raping a woman. Yeah. Now, he's found not guilty, but maybe, like, her brothers or something wanted to follow him into the woods and...
Yeah, and he did get the worst beating of it all.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it seemed like he was the most targeted for sure. When Nichols went to celebrate his earnings in Bend, maybe during the Christmas time, maybe he roused anger then. They took a lot of money with him. Or maybe even just got the attention of someone who managed to fly under the radar. Maybe him boasting about his earnings and valuable silver foxes worth $1,600 piqued some unsavory... characters' attention. I mean, when they went back for Christmas, they earned like 50 grand in today's money. And they were like, oh, hey, we just made 50 grand. Yeah. Now we're going to go back to that cabin in the woods that's miles and miles from anybody.
We won't be back till April.
Yeah. See you then, folks. Yeah. And maybe Nichols wasn't alone in being the target of possible revenge. As you said, Dewey Morris, he had been in some pretty notorious trial not long earlier, and it did seem like his fate was the worst. The lack of a clear motive renders basically unsolved cases like these very difficult to speculate on, as the level of psychopathy required to commit violence, just for the sake of violence, also comes with a skill set that helps blending into society and staying unnoticed. And staying unnoticed in the 1920s wasn't that hard to begin with. It could be someone no one thought of because that's what they were good at. Someone who moved between towns and states, assuming false identities, committing crimes that went unsolved because they had no connection to them, avoiding accumulating a criminal record. Someone unassuming, likable, charismatic even, normal enough to not stand out in people's minds. But even so, it can be fairly certainly speculated that what happened to the tree trappers was that Kimsey made good on his threat. If not, it was the most terrible timing for threatening somebody that you're going to kill them and saying, what was that quote he said? I'm going to clear up those boys in Bend or whatever.
It's like, I'm going to kill them. They're already dead. Oh, shit.
Yeah. The only real mystery is who or whom was his accomplice. Was it Will Coxon? Was it Ray Van Buren, who fights kids and threatens them with guns?
The kitty fighter.
Yeah, he rocks. Or was it someone completely unknown? Some criminal nobody Kimsey managed to get behind him on his revenge quest? Did he only bring one henchman, or is there someone else who went to their grave with a horrifying secret? The murderers are all dead now for sure. Kimsey died in Idaho, Ray Van Buren committed suicide in his 60s, and the unknown partners, if there are any, are also long gone. If someone passed on a story or confession, it hasn't come to light. There is no apparent evidence to test to seek any sort of newfound resolution. The Deschutes Forest will keep its sordid secrets, and Oregon's most famous cold case will likely stay as cold as the icy waters of lava lakes where the victims' remains rested for 3 months over 100 years ago. And that'll do it for the Lava Lake Trapper murders.
Interesting story.
Very interesting story. I thought it was really a good one. You gotta wonder what happened there.
Yeah, I do like those unsolvable mysteries. It's scary as well to think that, like, obviously Kimsey, he was put behind bars for other crimes, so like he was put out, like he was taken away from society, but there was still someone else. Like, there was definitely 2 people, I'd say.
Yeah, there was 1,000% 2 people there. I mean, Carl Schumacher, who bought their furs from him, said there was 2 people. One person he didn't really see. The other person he described as like charming and stuff, and said he was like a nice guy.
Like, for someone to do that, to like brutally murder like 3 people and dispose of the bodies in the way they did, still just walking around.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. All right, folks, that'll do it for this sole episode. As always, please rate and review the podcast, but only good reviews, folks. If you give us a bad review, we don't want it. Okay? Just to let you know. If you get a bad review, keep it to yourself, okay? No one cares. All right, folks, but thanks so much for listening. It means a lot to me. Appreciate you taking the time to listen. I know it means a lot to Keith as well. He's getting teary-eyed at the thought. All right, and we'll see you in the next whole episode, which is up every single Monday is a brand new episode with me and Keith. On Fridays, you get a kind of a bonus. It's not really a bonus episode. It's like the auto of a YouTube video from the main That Chapter channel. And yeah, more stories coming. Stay tuned, folks. More stories coming soon. Listener stories. We got a good listener stories actually we recorded already. That'll be up soon.
It's a good one.
It's a very good one. Faye, if you're listening and you know who you are, you gave me nightmares and genuinely scared me. So stay tuned for that one, folks. But until then, please take care of each other and yourselves, because I love ya.
And I'll see you.
All right. Thanks, guys. So when her son Roy did...
That was really harsh.
I know. I had to retake that.
Oh, Jesus.
So when her son... I can't even do it again. I let it slip that I'm Irish. Fuck.